There may be instances where you are collaborating with a colorist or visual effects artist or another editor, and you would like to include some notes or annotations on a particular frame or frames for that individual to be aware of. If there are corrections that need to be made or color grades, for instance. Or you may have a situation where you'd like to make some notes for yourself to refer to at a later time in the post-production process. Now on our edit page, we have our two viewers, the source viewer on the left and our timeline viewer on the right, and we can add annotations within either one. So if you have a clip that's not yet been added to the timeline, we can still come to the bottom left corner of our source viewer and then activate the annotations mode, and then we can see our annotation toolbar up at the top. So we can then make some notes or annotations on a particular source clip before we even brought it into our timeline for future reference. But let's come over to our timeline viewer and we can access the annotation mode just the same by coming to the bottom left and just being sure that we select annotations down at the bottom. We then have our annotation tools at the top left corner, and just notice that within our timeline here, we're going to have a marker that appears once we add an annotation. So starting from the left, we have stroke that we can add, and we can choose the weight by clicking on the drop down menu. I'll choose the largest one there, and let's actually select a different color with this menu here. I'll choose the red. We can then go ahead and just freely draw in here, and then if you notice now, we have a marker that's been populated within our timeline, and this is what actually contains the annotations that we input into the viewer here. Now we have a couple other tools here, so we can click on the arrow if we'd like to add an arrow. We have a line tool and a square, so we can come in and draw a square or rectangle. Now after that's been drawn, I can also come to the color palette here and then change that to another color. And if you'd like to change the color of any annotations at any time, just be sure that notice that we have it looks like a pen here now, but if I hover on an annotation, it changes to the arrow. We can then click once to be sure we select that, and then I can come to the color palette and change that to a different color if I'd like. Let's choose the blue. And if we'd like to include some detailed notes for this annotation, then we can come to the marker within the timeline, double click, and then now we have this pop-up window where we can go ahead and put in whatever note we'd like. We can change the color, input a keyword, but let's go ahead and click done. So now if I move our playhead a bit forward, then you can see that those annotations disappear, and only when we come to this one particular frame do they show. And if you ever have an issue where these are not showing, just know that if we come to our options menu for the timeline viewer, this kind of ellipsis button here, we can click on that, and we have show marker overlays. If I go ahead and click once to toggle that off, then we're not going to see those annotations. Okay, but then coming back, we can choose the show marker overlays and those return. And then also note that if let's just move off of this, I'm going to press the left arrow and then play this back. As we play back over that marker, we don't see those annotations pop up, and that's because we have another option within the menu here to show overlays during playback. This is going to be off by default, but if I go ahead and toggle that back on, and then let's scroll back a bit and then play back, we'll see that pop up really quickly there, just for that one frame while we're playing back. So just know that you have these couple of different options for viewing your overlays or your annotations within the viewer menu here. Now, if you'd like to remove any annotation, just go ahead and be sure that you select it by clicking once. We see that we have this white border around that, and then I can then press backspace or Alt and M, and then that has been removed. We can see the marker is now gone from our timeline.